That is an internal journey which we have to take. But when we recognize that I'm running after so many things which are not real, but still I'm not experiencing reality as it is. So there is something to be done so that I come across to experience reality as it is. Then there is a path. It's an interesting story there. This sutra has been so profoundly beneficial during Xuanzang's journey to India. At even deeper level, the place where this happens is our own awareness. Okay? So all the Buddhas, all this teaching are just happening in our own awareness, and we take it directly into our experience. Buddha is sitting into a samadhi, into a deep state of meditation. So here itself a question should come. Why should the Buddha meditate? Buddha is already realized. Buddha has gone beyond meditation and non-meditation. Welcome back, everyone. So we continue with the Heart Sutra. So when we speak of the sutra, the Heart Sutra of Transcendental Perfection of Wisdom, Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. So in the beginning, there is a opening homage. So this is not part of the actual Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. So this is a homage to the Prajna Paramita itself added in the beginning. So in the Tibetan translation, these 4 lines were added, which is supposedly from Rahula Bhadra's lines in Sanskrit. But when I look for these lines in Rahula Bhadra's work, I cannot find precisely these lines. But anyway, these are the lines which are quite profound. In fact, this is even more profound than what I can find in Rahula Bhadra's. So there is a reverse translation which we made into Sanskrit so that we can just do everything in Sanskrit. Avache achinte pratnya paramite avarnaniye anutpade anirudhe akasha svabhavatmake swasamveda jnanasye gocarasye niramaye Namastubhyam Bhagavati Trikalajinamataye. Beyond words, beyond thought, beyond expression, O Prajna Paramita, unborn and unceasing, the very essence of space, experienced as the pristine wisdom of one's own awareness, O the unstained one. Homage to you, the mother of the Buddhas of the 3 times. So here, this is a line where this is explaining kind of the quality of that kind of realization, which is beyond words, beyond any kind of expression, which is beyond even, which can be expressed through comparisons. And it is beyond thought. It's kind of inconceivable. I kind of mentioned this last time too. The idea is not to just say that, okay, oh, the reality is beyond what you can know and just leave it there. So the Prajna Paramita explains it so well, how it is going beyond what we can imagine, how it is going beyond what we can conceptualize, how it is going beyond whatever we can compare in terms of imagery. So where the limitations are, okay, where our conceptual graspings fail. And through that, it takes us to something beyond that. So it's not like, okay, oh, no need to discuss this, it's beyond that. It's not in that kind of beyond. It's more of like discuss, understand, and see where the limit of conceptualization comes. And then kind of transcend that limit, transcend beyond conceptualization, and just come to directly experiencing it. And when you directly experience it, it is explained to be unborn and unceasing. These words I will explain later because in the sutra these words come, and at that time we will go through that more deeply. And it's like an essence of space. We discussed this shortly last time. So it is like there is space which we experience space, but there is nothing which we can hold on to and say this is space. Oh, this is where the space is. but there is an experience of space. In the same way, there is this experience of reality, but there is nothing which we can conceptualize and say, oh, this is it, this exists, this does not exist. It's beyond even the categories of existing and non-existing. So it is beyond that, but it is something one can experience. So one can transcend our limitations of current wisdom, and one can go deeply into very naked experience of awareness, free from all the baggages, free from all conceptuality, into directly experiencing what it is. And there we experience what is the wisdom of the transcendental wisdom perfection, the transcendental perfection of wisdom, or the Prajna Paramita. So that is why the line also says it is experienced as the pristine wisdom of one's own awareness. There is no other way it can be experienced. It is so when there is nothing to hold on to, there is no concept which you hold on to, and the mind is completely free, and the awareness quality is so nakedly open, you experience reality directly. Directly, not as a subject which hold on to an object, but just directly as the naturally arising awareness wisdom. That way, here explained to be the Swasamveda Jnanasya Gochara. So Gochara, it is the domain of that. So it is not the domain of our ordinary conceptualities, but this is the domain or the domain of experience of our own totally open awareness, our own Buddha nature. So when we truly progress, when we go beyond our limitations, we directly experiences Prajna Paramita. We experiences that truth which cannot be put into words then. Okay? And it is that realization of Prajna Paramita from which all the Buddhas are born. So from that perspective, it is explained that this Prajna Paramita is the mother of all the Buddhas. So even though there is this imagery of a goddess form or a Buddha, a female Buddha giving the teaching like this, so that is just an imagery to communicate that kind of an experience that, oh, this wisdom is the mother of all the Buddhas. But it is not really like a person, but it is the realization which only one can directly hold. So when one opens the mind, free from all conceptuality, one clear away all that concealments in the mind, all the baggages from the mind, one directly experiences it, and when directly experiences Prajna Paramita, so there one becomes the Buddha. So from that perspective, this wisdom is the mother of all Buddhas. So there are also levels of progress. So now we have wisdom. Wisdom is not something like there is wisdom always, right? So when we know ordinary things also, we have wisdom. But this wisdom is very conventional wisdom, and it is full of errors. We make a lot of conceptual errors with our current wisdom. Basically, we take what is impermanent to be permanent. We take what is not self to be self, and in that way, like, and what is dukkha to be sukha. So we get confused. So free from that is the real wisdom, and truly knowing the nature, that is the wisdom perfection. So it is when it is called transcendental perfection of wisdom, the Prajna Paramita, when it goes beyond all that limitations, where there is nothing to be kind of unturned, nothing left unturned. We've kind of thoroughly gone beyond, where there is nothing which is held in an erroneous way. When it is totally open, when we get to see that, okay, there is nothing which stands out, okay, there we get to the Prajna Paramita. So in this context, we can also just see the some lines which Rahula Bhadra has spoken about Prajna Paramita. They are also quite beautiful, but I felt this Tibetan lines, the translation which comes in Tibetan, which is maybe from another work of Rahula Bhadra. This seems more profound, so that is why we keep that Tibetan itself and did a reverse translation. But this line which I'm showing now, these are directly from Rahulabhadra's work. Nirvikalpe namastubhyam prajna paramite amite yatvam sarvanavadyangi niravadhe nirikshase Akashamiva nirlepam nishprabhanjam niraksharam yastvam pashyadi bhavena sa pashyadi tathagata. Homage to you, the non-conceptual, boundless perfection of wisdom. O the perfectly flawless one, you are beheld by the flawless. So basically, when we are flawless, like when we purify our mind, what we behold is that wisdom which is perfectly flawless. So even though kind of a duality is expressed, like we become pure and we hold a wisdom, this is for our understanding. Actually, that new duality is just for the sake of explaining. But it is like the very awareness which comes, recognizes itself, and it is that kind of a wisdom. So this duality of a flawless one being held by someone who is flawless is just for the understanding purpose alone. And then like space, this is same as what you've seen already, the like space, unstained and beyond all elaboration, beyond all syllables. Whoever sees you through realization sees the Tathagata. So this is how Rahulabhadra praises. Okay? So with that, now we can go into the actual verse. So when the sutra starts, there is a title, Bhagavati Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. So this title sometimes appear little differently in different versions. So the early versions of the Prajna Paramita Sutra, which got translated into Tibetan, it comes as Bhagavati Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. And in some versions which were translated to Chinese, it comes as Arya Bhagavati Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. But in the currently available Sanskrit copies, it just comes as the Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. But anyway, the translation to Tibetan and Chinese happened in the early period. So that is mainly in the 5th to 8th, 9th century kind of period. So that seems to be like the more of the total title. It means the title means the Sutra of the heart essence of the transcendental perfection of wisdom. So now when we talk of the title, one interesting thing about it is that, okay, if we kind of understand the title, we kind of understand the whole text. So it is sometimes told like for someone of a superior faculty, just hearing the title, everything becomes so clear. So hearing title is enough, but most often that is not enough. So we also go into detailed explanation. But just to explain the title itself, so there is, we had this word Bhagavati there. Bhagavan is nothing but like the Buddha. So Bhagavati is here the female word for the Buddha. So then there is Bhagavati Prajna Paramita. Prajna Paramita, as we already discussed, is the perfection of wisdom. Okay. So the transcendental perfection of wisdom is Prajna Paramita. So Sutra means the continuity, the thread. Sutra, literal meaning is thread. So it is like the words of Buddha or what has been approved by the Buddha. When it kind of continues through a transmission and comes, this is called the Sutra. So that is how the Sutra comes. Okay. So now when we speak of Prajna Paramita, the transcendental perfection of wisdom, we need to understand like 4 types of transcendental perfection of wisdom. This is quite important. So one is what is quite natural, like the very foundation, when we understand that, okay, when we go beyond all constructs, when we analyze and see that, okay, what it is, the true reality. So that true reality is called the Prajna Paramita of the ground or the natural Prajna Paramita. Natural Prajna Paramita means it is just natural. So we might be currently experiencing a lot of confusion. We might be experiencing things differently. We might be thinking impermanent to be permanent, but that's all our confusion. But what is the reality? The reality is that the expression of that reality is the natural Prajna Paramita or the Prajna Paramita of the ground. Now, the problem is that we do not recognize it correctly. So the things are very simple. So there is lucid clarity. There is no beyond concepts. Everything is so simple and perfect. When Buddha realizes the truth, that in that truth, it's like nirvana, it is enlightenment, there is perfection in that. So when we do not realize that, even though we are capable of experiencing the same thing, we experience so much problems in this world. So we have problems in the world, we have suffering, we have limitations, we have constraints, we have baggages, because we hold on to what is not true. Okay? So because we hold on to what is not true, we do not experience reality as it is. Now, we have to traverse a path so that we clear away our confusion and we come to directly seeing reality as it is. Okay? So when we traverse the path and when we come to face seeing the reality, what has been expressed in that verse earlier, like in our self-arise and that naked awareness, we hold the Prajna Paramita. So when we come to that, that is the fruitional Prajna Paramita or the Prajna Paramita of the result. Basically, there is a ground reality which we are not realizing, because of which we are confused, we suffer, we have confusions, and we travel in awkward ways. And then to get to that realization and to experience that reality as it is, that is the fruitional Prajna Paramita or the Prajna Paramita of the result. And now there is a journey to be done. That is, we know there is a ground which is perfect, but we do not experience the ground. Our reality is that, but because we do not experience reality, we have confusion. Okay? And now we have to get across to experience the reality. And to do that, we have to traverse a path. And how to traverse the path and understanding the path, applying our knowledge about the ground into the path. This may be a little complicated now, don't worry. As we go down to the details, word by word in the sutra, all this will become very clear. Okay? But just to give an overview again, so as we traverse from the ground to the result is not really a journey outside somewhere. It is like we know reality. When we analyze, when we study this sutra, we understand that, oh, reality is so simple. But then we do not experience it that way. So now how to bridge that gap? We know reality is simple, but we do not experience it that way. How to bridge that gap? And that is traversing the path. That is our understanding which we derive from this sutra. How do we apply? And how to apply so that we actually come to the reality, when we come to that unstained state of mind, and that is the Prajna Paramita of the path. Okay? And the fourth Prajna Paramita is the Prajna Paramita of the scriptures or scriptural Prajna Paramita. That is all these different volumes of Prajna Paramita which we spoke about last time, which explains the teachings, the words of Buddha, which explains this teaching, is the Prajna Paramita of the scripture or scriptural Prajna Paramita. So is this clear? This may be a little abstract, but just want to make sure, because this gives a kind of a framework through which we will be traversing. Any question on that?
So, what is the ground reality? Realizing that it is groundless. Is it the permanent ground of reality? what is meant by that. So seeing that everything is groundless or everything is ever changing or not permanent,
Ha.
is that the ground reality?
So that is our understanding of ground reality in terms of concepts, right? So basically, we take lot of things as
Yes.
the ground where we stand. We are stuck onto this, stuck onto that, like that we think. But when we analyze deeply, we see that okay, oh, that ground is not really there. It is just our concept. We have been holding that ground through our concept. Okay, so when we
Yes.
see that is groundless, or whatever has been like permanent, we see it's not permanent, it's changing, right? So recognizing that is like we are moving closer to reality. So now this recognition is at that time just conceptual. We only know a map about the ground. So basically, we recognize that there is a conflict between reality and our experience. Okay. So when we have a image or a conceptual map about the ground, all that we gain is that we recognize, oh, there is a conflict between reality and our experience, and something needs to be done about it. Right. So true ground we haven't experienced. So we only have a conceptual map about the ground. The true ground we haven't experienced. Now traversing the path, we get to experience the true ground. So then we truly see the ground, and that is the fruition. So ground and fruition are in fact same. And this leads to tremendous confusion in the New Age. Okay? There are so many New Age gurus, okay, who claim, who does all this deconstruction and say there is nothing to be attained. Okay, there is nothing to be attained. So there is not even a path required. Okay? Because there is nothing to attain. What is there even a need for a path? But that is dangerous. Because in theory, we can say there is nothing to attain, or there is everything is groundless, but we are holding on to many things as ground in our experience, right? And we are suffering out of that. And so there is something to be changed in us so that, okay, we truly come to the experience of what is reality, right? So that is a journey. That is an internal journey which we have to take. So there is an order in which it needs to be understood. So if you just take, oh, nothing to be attained, okay, so everything is done, so I'll just stay where I am, right? Then there is no progress. But when we recognize that, okay, oh, actually, a lot of it is just confusion. I'm running after so many things which are not real, but still I'm not experiencing reality as it is. So there is something to be done so that I come across to experience reality as it is. Then there is a path. But when the path takes to directly you experiencing reality as it is, then it is true. There is nothing to be done. There is no path needed. When you directly come to realize the experience of reality as it is, when your experience of your experience becomes same as the true reality of ground, that is the fruition. And when that fruition happens, there is no path needed. But when there is no fruition, there is a path needed. But this concept, again, we will go deeply when we get down to particular aspects in the sutra. Okay?
So reality is realizing that this is unreal.
That is a little bit of a simplified statement. Okay? Because the reality is beyond existence and non-existence. Because unreal can also be a concept. This is unreal, fine, but then what is reality? Right?
So in Prajna Paramita, the first sutra, it is said that it is unborn and unceasing.
Unceasing. Yes, yes.
How can be that? If everything is changing.
Yes, yes. So everything is changing, but nothing is truly born. So that we will come to. These words come later in the sutra. So that time we will go through very detailed explanation on that. Okay. This verse we will keep revisiting again and again because the meaning of this phrase, right, will become much more clarified as we go through the content in the sutra. Okay. So we can come back to this again and again. Okay. Because
what is What is that ground? You say that ground. What is that?
Okay, ground here just means ground reality or the natural state. What is real truth or reality? So basically, this is the reality. It can be taken in different ways. One is in the Sutra, Buddha, or here Avalokitesvara presence. This is the reality. That is one thing. So another is we can analyze. We can do logical analysis and all see. Oh, what we take is all confusion. This needs to be split apart. And when we see, oh, okay, what we are experiencing is not reality, and reality is something else. That's what she was telling earlier. Like. What we experience is quite unreal. We take it to be real, but it is unreal. What we take to be existent is not truly existent. We'll come down to examples later. There it will become more clear. Okay. So otherwise it will be two-way. But when we realize that, but we haven't experienced it. We have, say we hear this text, this is how the ground is. That might appear like very strange. But then we analyze with logic, it seems, oh, okay, this is very logical and rational. Okay, even then it's not our experience. So we have a conceptual image about the ground when we analyze. Okay.
Another thing you said about the homage to Bhagavad, the three Buddhas.
So Namastubhyam Bhagavati Trikala Jina Mataye. Trikala Jina Mataye means Trikala Jina. Jina means Buddha, the one who has conquered over all the emotions. And Trikala Jina means Buddhas of the past, present, and future. Okay. So
Mata is
all
mother.
the Buddhas.
Mata is
Mata is mother. Yeah. So this Prajna Paramita is the mother of all the Buddhas. But again, it is a symbolic depiction of her as a lady Buddha, but it is truly, it is just the wisdom which we realize. So now we shall move forward. And then the sutra says it is Vistara Matraga. So there are two versions of the sutras, Samkshipta Matraga and the Vistara Matraga. So the difference is that, okay, the essence is same, but the initial portion, the narrative context and the final portion, as we go, we'll see, that comes in the Vistara Matraga, the extensive version. The Samkshipta Matraga does not have. So typically a sutra will have a context which explains like when it happened. Okay, the Buddha was sitting and there was somebody and somebody asked this question and this starts and finally there is a conclusion. So in the Samkshipta Matraga, only the essence part is taken and this portion is missing. But still that's also valid. So the one which we have in the Tibetan version is the Vistara Matraga. There is a Samkshipta Matraga which Xuanzang has translated to Chinese. So where the initial portion of the Buddha sitting in Rajgriha and all those things are not there. It directly starts with Shariputra asking a question to Avalokitesvara and Avalokitesvara answering it. And it doesn't have the final part where the Buddha says, yes, what you said is right, that is missing. So it's mainly Avalokitesvara and Shariputra alone in the Samkshipta Matraga. But it's an interesting story there. This sutra has been so profoundly beneficial during Xuanzang's journey to India. So Xuanzang, you must be knowing, right? The traveler, the monk traveler. Most of us in India know him as just a traveler who kind of came and documented things in India. But he is not just a traveler. He was a very high scholar and so much enthusiastic about learning Buddhism. So he has been a Buddhist monk in China. But he felt like he needs much more wisdom. He wanted to travel all the way to India in search of the wisdom. So he starts a journey through the Silk Route. So he had to walk through the Silk Route and come all the way, taking a very hazardous journey. He has to come to India. And then he clears the entrance exam to join the Nalanda University. And he completes the course and becomes the rank holder there. Okay. And Xuanzang is also sent to Emperor Harsha's court when Emperor Harsha wanted a top debater to come and debate on philosophy topics. Xuanzang is sent there. In his journey to India, when he was coming through this Silk Route, okay, there was a time when he was traveling alone through the desert and the leather water bag which was carrying kind of fell down and the water also was lost and he was kind of stuck there. with no water, and he was about to die, like days went without water. It is said that he was basically reciting the mantra of Avalokitesvara and all that. And after somebody comes and he gets water, he moves forward, and then he reaches a monastery in between where there was a very sick monk. So Xuanzang stays there instead of continuing his deeply desired journey to India. He kind of stays there to take care of that monk till that monk is fine. Okay, and then that monk gives a scripture which happens to be this. Okay, so Xuanzang takes it's almost like the blessing of Avalokitesvara that he got this, and through all the rest of his journey, all through coming to India and going back, he was reciting this very often, not only for the wisdom but also as like a protection and all that. He was referring this. So this so Xuanzang has been profoundly using it not only for wisdom but also as like a protection and harmony and all that. Okay, so that was only the essence small portion. So now in the extensive version, then we start with a homage. So homage is again, as the sutra is compiled, it starts with a homage line. Namo Bhagavate Prajna Paramitaye. Namo Bhagavate. So that is homage to the blessed mother of the transcendental perfection of wisdom. So in some available versions in Sanskrit, instead it comes as Namo Sarvajnaya. So which is basically a homage to the Buddha. So either is fine. So but in the early ones, which is translated to Tibetan and Chinese, it comes as Namo Bhagavate Prajna Paramitaye. Then here the actual sutra starts. Evam maya shrutam ekasmin samaye Bhagavan Rajagrihe viharati sma Gridhrakude parvate Mahata bhikshu sankhena sartham Mahata jabodhisattva sankhena. So here, this is a standard part where the 6 perfections of the narrative context are kind of elaborated. Basically, the context where everything happens, the stage is set here. So there is something called the perfections regarding a teaching, which is sometimes called the 5 perfections, and here it is called as the 6 perfections. So evam, thus, is a profound word here. It means like, thus I am putting it. So the thus here means that, okay, I am not modifying anything. So whatever is heard has been just put just like that. Okay. So this is the perfection of teaching. The thus kind of indicates the perfection of teaching. So it means that, okay, thus I have heard and I am just giving as it is, not adding anything, not deleting anything. So just the same way it is being passed. So usually a sutra is words of Buddha, and the words of Buddha are just passed like that. So commentaries can be there. We say one can add commentaries to it to say that, okay, to explain the meaning. But in the sutra itself, it remains untouched. One does not modify the sutra. One just keep the sutra as it is. So here again, here in fact, most of it is spoken by Avalokitesvara, and then at the end of it, Buddha says whatever Avalokitesvara has spoken is true. This is exactly how it is. So thus it becomes a stamp of the Buddha and thus equal to the word of the Buddha. So, and that is just maintained as it is. So thus here means that, okay, it is just same way it is passed. Evam maya shrutam, I have heard. So who has heard? Okay, is an issue here, because it just says I have heard. So who is that I? Is a perfect compiler. So the perfect compiler in this case, there are different commentaries which give different opinions. So some say Vajrapani, Bodhisattva Vajrapani is as the compiler of the Prajna Paramita Sutras, and thus Vajrapani is the compiler. But some others say it's a group of bodhisattvas like Manjushri and Avalokitesvara, all of them together compiled this. So either way, it is like certain realized disciples just saying, I have heard and I am just passing it. They are not adding something of their own into that. What has been heard is just being passed. So that I who heard is the one who just heard as it is. And here it means heard and not realized. This is also quite important. So, thus I have realized is not what it is. Whatever has been heard is passed just as it is. So, whatever their realization is can be in a commentary, in a bhashya. But the word as it is passed is just the Buddha's word as it is. Okay? And then Ekasmin samaye Bhagavan, Ekasmin samaye. At that time, so here the Bhagavan is the perfect teacher. Okay, so there is a perfect teaching, the perfect compiler, and the perfect teacher, and then the perfect timing. The timing here is like when the Bhagavan was dwelling in the Rajagriha. So again, some profound commentaries onto this. Sometimes explain it that where it is happening. So Rajagriha is a place which is near. It's in Bihar. Okay. So earlier it was the capital of Magadha. Before Patna, the Patliputra became the capital. Before that, Magadha's capital was Rajagriha. Okay, so near the Rajagriha, there is this Grithaguda mountain, the vulture peak, which is like a tall peak with a small area above that. And in that place, Buddha was sitting with all the disciples. So at a conventional level, it can be understood like there was a place where Buddha explained this teaching. But at a deeper level, it is also explained like at an outer level, this is that the Grithaguda mountain in Rajagriha, but at a deeper level, it is the pure realm of all the Buddhas where this happened. So like Akanishta. But at even deeper level, the place where this happens is our own awareness. Okay? So all the Buddhas, all this teaching are just happening in our own awareness, and we take it directly into our experience. So there are levels in which the perfection of the place and time happens. And the perfection of the time also that way, it is when we are ready to receive it is the perfect timing, if we look from that perspective. Okay? Dwelling in Rajagriha, Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great assembly of bhikshus and great assembly of bodhisattvas. So here it says Mahatam. So the great assembly. So the great assembly here means it is not just ordinary bhikshus. The bhikshus here are realized arhat monks. So those who already have the realization of the Sravaka path, that kind of bhikshus, basically somebody who has realized the selflessness and has entered the cycle of birth and death, that kind of bhikshus are sitting there. And there is also the bodhisattva disciples, Mahata Bodhisattva. Mahata Bodhisattva means again the bodhisattvas who are not just bodhisattvas who wish to become bodhisattvas, but just entered the path, but these are bodhisattvas who have reached certain level of realizations, like reaching the grounds, which we'll explain what it means later. Okay? And then we go into next part. Tena ghalu samayena Bhagavan Gampīrāvasambodham nama dharma paryaya samadhim samabannaha. At that time, Bhagavan entered the samadhi of the enumeration of the dharma called knowing the profound. So the knowing the profound, or it's also maybe called the profound illumination, basically Gampira Avasambodha. So this needs to be understood. One word I wanted to explain a little bit is about Bhagavan. So when you hear about Bhagavan, what thought comes to you?
Buddha.
Buddha? Okay, that is because you've heard it in this context, right? Okay. Sometimes we feel that Bhagavan is just like a name for the God, but actually Bhagavan has certain meanings. In Nagarjuna's Prajna Paramita Shastra, he explains about 6 different meanings for Bhagavan. Okay, so one meaning is that one who is fortunate to attain nirvana enlightenment. So Bhagavan is not like God. Bhagavan is someone who started like us. Somebody who has started ordinary and through their practice has been fortunate enough to attain the perfection of liberation as well as enlightenment. So this comes from kind of a root which connects to bhagya, the fortune. So that is one meaning. Another one meaning is connected to what is called bhanga, stopping. So Bhagavan is the one who has stopped attachment, aversion, and delusions by practicing the way. So again, Bhagavan is one who started like us, who had, before becoming Bhagavan, had all the afflictive emotions just like any one of us, and then through the practice was able to stop bhanga, stop or break all those attachment, aversion, and delusion, and thus by doing the bhanga of the negative emotions become Bhagavan. Then it's also another meaning of bhanga is related to one who has defeated the four maras, four demons. These are typically these are the inner obstructions or obstacle to one's own awakening. So one who has defeated all those obstacles have an attained awakening. So that way, who has defeated the maras is another meaning why Bhagavan the word comes. Then another meaning is one who is full of qualities. So the Bhagha here relates to the qualities. So one who is possessing so many tremendously perfect qualities. So that is another meaning of Bhagavan. Then one who is related to Vibhanga, analysis, the one who is able to perfectly analyze everything, like the what is the characteristics of something, what is its self-characteristics, what is its general characteristics, like that. When one is able to analyze everything perfectly, one is able to do the Vibhanga or analysis, that way he is Bhagavan. Then, of course, the sixth meaning is like Bhaga, related to fame. So the one who is famed through all these qualities. So these are like different meanings through which someone becomes Bhagavan. Okay? But the word Bhagavan would have origin before the Buddha of our time. So the Bhagavan word was, these different Sanskrit roots are there, but together calling it as a Bhagavan is at the Buddha's time. So Buddha was called Bhagavan. So likewise, the Jains would have called Mahavira as Bhagavan, because the Jains consider Mahavira as also cross like that. So it was never like coming from a godly kind of term. It was more coming from humans' liberation kind of perspective. Okay. But later, when the Bhagavan word has become so pious and there was kind of a devotional feel associated with Bhagavan, it was also used for gods. Why I make this clear now is because, okay, I've noticed that sometimes people, when they hear the word Bhagavan, thinks that, oh, are we talking something about gods here? Not at all. Okay. So Bhagavan is something which we become. Bhagavan is something which we become through practice. So it is not a talk about gods. So here, the Buddha, usually in sutras, like Buddha is sitting for a conversation and somebody comes and asks a question and Buddha gives an answer at that level. But here, the narrative context as it evolves now, the Buddha is not speaking. Buddha is sitting into a samadhi, into a deep state of meditation. So here itself a question should come. Okay, why should the Buddha meditate? Buddha is already realized. Buddha has gone beyond meditation and non-meditation and all that. He is beyond learning and completely realized everything. So he doesn't have to meditate. The Buddha sees reality as it is. His mind is always peaceful. And he doesn't have to make any special meditation to have a special seeing, because no matter whether he is sitting in meditation or not, he always sees reality as it is. So there is absolutely no need for Bhagavan, Buddha, to enter into a meditation for his own purpose. Okay, but still he enters a meditation because it is to inspire others. So it is the Bhagavan's meditation, the Buddha's entry into meditation, into this profound illumination, is kind of paving way for the rest of Sutra to evolve. So that is becoming a very inspiring context where Avalokitesvara is meditating and Shariputra's question comes. And the kind of meditation Buddha entered here is that the profound illumination. Okay, so the profound illumination means like a very clearly seeing. There are two meanings to illumination here. One is like very clearly seeing. So this is illumination with respect to awareness, being totally clearly aware, utterly purely aware. The other aspect of illumination is like the glory, which inspires others. That meditation, Buddha is in kind of a very glorious state. Everyone feels the peace of Buddha's meditation, and that inspires others. So there are two ways in which it is illuminated. Okay, and the kind of samadhi is named Dharma Paryaya Samadhi, or the samadhi of the enumeration of dharmas. This kind of profound seeing which Buddha gets into is not something like he got into something and now he is not seeing anything. It's not like he has withdrawn into something where he is not aware of anything else. He is dharma parya. Enumeration of dharma means enumeration of phenomena. He is seeing everything. He is seeing everything, yet he is also experiencing the true nature of everything. So in a way, he is experiencing what we have been talking, like groundlessness of everything, the emptiness of everything. But it doesn't mean that, oh, it's all empty, so I'm not seeing anything. He is seeing everything and realizing that it's empty. It will become more clear as we go further. Okay? Tena jasamayena arya avalokitesvaro bodhisattva mahasattva gambhirayam prajna paramitayam charyam charamanaha evam vibhalogayadesma. At that time, Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara, while engaging in the practice of profound Prajna Paramita, was thoroughly seeing in this way. Okay, so at this point, I think we should know who is Avalokitesvara. At an explanatory level, you can understand Avalokitesvara as a person who became a bodhisattva with an idea that, okay, I want to benefit all beings. I don't want to pass away into nirvana till that happens. So with great compassion, decided not to go beyond. But inside, that brings tremendous force of realization, because you're so selfless, you want to be for everybody. You don't want to even get your enlightenment and go away. So that selflessness brings realization even more faster. Okay. So he has become Buddha, but outwardly, he is like, I don't want to display Buddha out and go away. He continues. So it is like just before Buddha, when we explain Bhumi, it become more clear. The 10th ground, he stays. And Avalokitesvara, that way, is the epitome of compassion. In a way, you can also, at a more profound way, you can also understand Avalokitesvara as the compassion of all the Buddhas put together in a personified form. So Avalokitesvara is expressed in various ways across traditions. So one popular form is this here, what I'm displaying now, like a 1,000-arm form, which depicts that, okay, with thousands of arms, Avalokitesvara is there to help beings. Avalokitesvara word meaning is like Avalokita means looking towards. So it is like looking to the world to see who needs benefit, who is suffering. I want to help all of them. So Avalokita means he is looking who needs help. And Ishvara means one who has Ishvatva, means power. So one who has the power to help. So one who has the mind to help, one who has the heart to help, and one who has the power to help. So Avalokitesvara has the heart to help, is always looking whom to help, and he has the power to help. Okay. So in one way of depiction, he has like 1,000 arms, and another way is like the 4-armed form called Mahakarunika. Then also sometimes is depicted in form of a woman. In China, for example, Kuan Yin is the form of Avalokitesvara. She is there depicted. She becomes she in China. She is depicted as a queen. And in India also, like Tara, in a way, is a feminine form of Avalokitesvara. Tara is explained to be coming from the tears of Avalokitesvara, and Tara becomes the enlightened activity of all the Buddhas. So, in a way, Tara is like feminine form of Avalokitesvara. And then the statue form I'm showing is like here in Bodhikshetra, and this form is kind of corresponding to the form in which Avalokitesvara was in the Potala mountains, which we know as the Agastyagodam. So this is like more of a rishi form. So some are like more celestial forms, and some are more like human form. Here with 2 hands and 2 legs, more like a rishi with jada and all that in the mountain of which we know as the Agastyagodam now. So he sits there and benefits. So in these kind of various forms, Avalokitesvara benefit beings. Another way of looking at Avalokitesvara, he is like the personification of the great compassion of all the Buddhas. So it can also be seen in an abstract way as the compassion of all the Buddhas, as well as that kind of great compassion which is kind of dormant within us. So we can invoke Avalokitesvara within us by opening our hearts to. Okay, so we will do the dedication part. Nanena punyena dusarvadarshita avapya nirjitya jadosha vidyusha jararuja mrityu mahormi sangulat samudhareyam Bhavasagara Jagat